For example, on the detention issue, there is still question whether the Obama administration is going to invoke the authority that the Bush administration invoked as to holding individuals that were not captured in a battlefield, like in Afghanistan, for example. If someone who was captured in Thailand and he had links to Al-Qaeda or has some kind of participation in activities that relate to Al-Qaeda, whether he can be held in a military custody without any access to normal procedures, to judicial review, as usually is the case in criminal cases. When you have a criminal international crime happens, how the law enforcement in different countries with cooperation between the countries usually work together. So that's one issue that is still not clear. The other point that we heard recently was the fact that the Obama administration might resort to legislation where it would ask Congress to enact a law that will provide some sort of preventative detention or administrative detention, meaning holding people without trial, without charge. This is something that has never done before in the United States. The good news is that just recently, as recent as last week, we heard from news reports citing and quoting Obama administration officials that they don't think that they will actually go to Congress for this kind of authority. So they will continue to use some of the authority given to the US government by Congress in the authorization of the use of military force back in November of 2001. The other issue that is still up in the air, has not been determined yet, is whether the administration will resort to military commissions to try detainees who are accused of being involved in terrorism acts or have been committed war crimes. And as you know, the Bush administration tried over this last 7 years to charge individuals before military commissions. They are separate from the US legal system. And they failed to do that. Only 3 individuals since 9/11 have been convicted in military commissions, even though they've been active since virtually since 2004. On the other hand, court system in the United States has tried more than 100 cases of terrorism in federal courts, that individuals were granted full rights, fair trial, access to most of the evidence, and so on. So that is still not clear whether the Obama administration will decide to revive the military commissions. We heard announcements that they want to revive the military commissions and revise the rules of procedures, and that's not clear whether that's going to be the case. And finally, the other important issue is the transfer of detainees from US custody to other countries where they would be at risk of being tortured. The US government, and part of the executive order, President Obama made it clear that the US government will not send individuals to countries that would torture individuals. However, we did not hear yet any assurances that the Obama administration is committed to end the rendition program, meaning they might be using the same rendition program of sending individuals to other countries, but with some assurances from the receiving countries that those individuals will not be tortured or abused. This is obviously an area of concern. We know that from experience of the last 7-8 years, most of the people who were transferred, transferred to Egypt and other countries, despite assurances from the Egyptian government that they will not be tortured, they in fact were subjected to torture and other forms of abuse. So this will remain one of the issues that will have to be obviously tackled and pressure the government to do the right thing. But let me focus on the issue of accountability, because I think that's the main issue that we want to talk about, and that is not completely disconnected from the other areas or issues that I just briefly talked about. The Obama administration has taken the position that it is better for the government and the country to move forward and not to look backward at past abuses. That's something that the president said in a number of occasions, that he does not want to see CIA agents who received legal guidance from the Justice Department to use techniques that they were called enhanced interrogation techniques, but we know that these are torture techniques. The president said that he does not want those individuals to be prosecuted or held liable or accountable for their acts. On the other hand, there are a number of areas where it is clear that this notion of not looking backward is not consistent with US law and US international obligations. The United States ratified the major treaties that address the treatment of detainees. It ratified the Geneva Conventions, the 4 Geneva Conventions. It ratified the Convention Against Torture in 1994. And those treaties oblige or mandate, make it very clear that states and countries have an obligation to investigate thoroughly and independently any allegations of acts of torture and abuse. And when there is credible evidence that there is such action took place, those individuals should be prosecuted and sentenced if they will be found guilty in a court of law. Despite those obligations, the practice of the Obama administration has been, no, we think this is going to politicize the discussion, the country again. It will polarize the country because Republicans will think that there's a witch hunt against the former administration, and the Democrats, some of them are split actually, will think that that's the right thing to do. As a legal organization, as a major legal organization in the United States, we said at the very beginning that any act of torture is a crime under US and international law. And no administration can turn a blind eye and look away from such a crime. Just like any government would be, is responsible for upholding its laws when it comes to any violation of the law, it is important to ensure that government officials, both at the political level, the leadership from the White House to the different departments, including the Department of Justice and the lawyers who assisted the administration in justifying acts of torture, we think it should be held accountable. The reasons for that is not only that we think this is a minimum fundamental requirement of the rule of law, but it's also important for the next administrations. If we only accept the executive orders that were signed by the Obama administration as the only way to deal with past abuses, any future president will come in to the White House and could sign another set of presidential orders, which will overturn the previous ones. And there will be no deterrence, there will be no signal, there will be no way that you could prevent that. Especially when you have acts of Congress, like the Military Commission Act that was enacted in 2006, that provided some immunity to certain forms of violations of international law, particularly for acts of torture committed by the CIA. So I think we are here looking at a historical opportunity to uphold the rule of law, send the right message both at home and abroad, saying, as the United States engages with the international community, and you've probably heard the United States telling different countries how to behave and how to deal with the human rights crisis, and how to the responsibility to investigate war crimes in other countries and other conflicts. I think that will undermine the US credibility if there is no domestic, independent, and comprehensive investigation that take place. So I think that's one of the things that we've been calling for. So far, you had a handful of soldiers who have been held accountable